The floor of the modest Tampa home told a story no one was prepared to read. A trail of crimson droplets marked a path from the doorway, across the living room hardwood, and down the hallway to the master bedroom. Each drop represented a moment, a decision that could never be undone. In the bedroom, the sheets were rumpled, discarded in haste. A service weapon rested on the nightstand, the barrel still warm. 5 shell casings scattered across the carpet like fallen stars. The room smelled of gunpowder and fear. When Officer Jessica Mathis fired 5 shots into her own father, she wasn't acting as law enforcement. She was a mother. Her badge, normally pinned proudly to her chest, lay discarded on the kitchen counter. In that moment, the oath she had sworn to protect and serve collided violently with another, more primal promise: to protect her child at all costs. What would drive someone sworn to uphold the law to pull the trigger on their own family? The answer lies buried beneath layers of duty, trauma, and a parent's desperate need to shield their child from harm. Jessica stood over her father's bleeding body, gun still in hand, when her colleagues arrived. Her expression wasn't rage or satisfaction. It was hollow resolution. The thin blue line between justice and vengeance shattered that night in Tampa. The police radio crackled with codes and coordinates as backup raced to the scene, but they were responding to something unprecedented: an officer-involved shooting where the shooter wore the same uniform they did. Was this protection or revenge? By the end, you'll need to decide. The evidence will be laid before you, each photograph, statement, and medical report forming pieces of a puzzle that doesn't fit neatly into our understanding of right and wrong. If this is your first time joining us, click subscribe now and turn on notifications. These stories matter. They challenge our assumptions about justice and family, showing how quickly ordinary lives can transform when faced with impossible choices. Don't miss a single episode as we examine cases that make us question what we would do in the same situation. How far would you go to protect your child? This question haunted Jessica Mathis long before she pulled the trigger. It's the same question that echoed through the courtroom during her trial, and the same one that divides communities when this story is told. As a police officer, she knew the law. As a mother, she knew something else entirely, something that transcended legal boundaries and entered the realm of instinct and sacrifice. The clock on the wall had stopped at 9:47 p.m. For the Mathis family, time had frozen at the exact moment everything changed forever. Jessica Mathis joined the Tampa Police Department in 2012 after graduating 3rd in her class at the academy. Her personnel file painted the portrait of an officer who excelled in crisis intervention. 3 commendations for diffusing volatile domestic disputes without casualties. 2 life-saving medals. A perfect firearms qualification record every quarter for 10 consecutive years. She could talk a jumper off a ledge with her eyes closed, said Lieutenant Carlos Mendez, her direct supervisor for 7 years. Jessica had this calm that settled over chaos like a blanket. She made people feel heard even during their worst moments. But the psychological wall officers construct between their professional and personal lives began to crumble for Jessica long before that fateful night. Dr. Eleanor Wright, forensic psychologist specializing in law enforcement psychology, explains, police officers develop compartmentalization as a survival mechanism. They witness trauma, make life or death decisions, then go home to help with homework. This duality creates internal friction. They're trained to observe evidence objectively, which can blind them to threats in their personal sphere. Jessica's relationship with her father, Michael Mathis, was complex from childhood. Michael raised Jessica alone after her mother died from cancer when Jessica was 8. Former neighbors described Michael as strict but involved, attending every school event while maintaining rigid household rules and expectations. Jessica referenced this dynamic in her personal journal, found during the investigation. Dad taught me discipline saves lives. He also taught me fear. I became a cop to protect people from the things that frightened me as a child. The irony isn't lost on me. 6 months before the shooting, Jessica's marriage to fellow officer Derek Chambers collapsed. Colleagues noticed the strain when they stopped arriving at shift briefings together. Court records reveal a straightforward dissolution. No contested assets, no documented allegations of misconduct. The separation agreement specified their 10-year-old daughter Lily would live primarily with Jessica. Housing costs in Tampa had skyrocketed. Jessica's salary couldn't secure a suitable 2-bedroom apartment in Lily's school district. Michael offered his 4-bedroom home, plenty of space, separate rooms, and the comfort of family during transition. Jessica accepted what seemed like the logical choice. Law enforcement officers face a particular challenge when personal crises coincide with professional demands, explains Dr. Wright. Their training emphasizes maintaining external control while suppressing emotional responses. This creates blind spots, especially regarding family. They're taught to trust authority figures, which can override intuitive warning systems when that authority figure is apparent. Red flags materialized in retrospect. Lily's bedroom door lock mysteriously broke. Michael insisted on driving Lily to school when Jessica worked early shifts. Lily began sleeping in Jessica's room, citing bad dreams. Bath time became a source of arguments between grandfather and granddaughter. Jessica's work schedule, meticulous in her calendar, showed increased requests for family emergency leave. These signals, cataloged individually, never coalesced into a pattern Jessica could recognize. Her training taught her to look for evidence, not suspicion. That changed on May 17th, when evidence finally appeared in a form too devastating to ignore. Michael Mathis, 68, retired Marine Corps sergeant with 27 years of service, Bronze Star recipient, deacon at Riverside Presbyterian Church, Little League coach for 15 seasons, board member of 3 community outreach programs, chairman of the Neighborhood Watch for a decade. Mike was the guy everybody respected, said Pastor James Wilson. He helped organize food drives, mentored troubled youth, and fixed widows' leaky faucets. The kind of neighbor who mowed your lawn when you were sick without being asked. This carefully constructed public image masked a psychological profile that Dr. Renee Hoffman, criminal behavioral analyst, identifies as textbook compartmentalized predator. The most dangerous offenders aren't hiding in shadows, they're hiding in plain sight, Dr. Hoffman explains. They cultivate sterling reputations deliberately. When accusations emerge, the community reaction is disbelief. Not him, he coaches children's sports. This shield of respectability is their most effective tool. Michael's military career provided structure while reinforcing his authoritarian tendencies. Former colleagues described him as exacting and meticulous. His performance evaluations praised his attention to detail, but noted concerns about rigidity with subordinates. His approach to parenting mirrored military command structure, notes Dr. Hoffman. Discipline wasn't about teaching, it was about control. Children raised in these environments learn compliance equals safety, questioning equals punishment. Court-ordered psychological evaluation revealed classic grooming behavioral patterns. Michael systematically isolated targets by fostering dependency. He created scenarios requiring physical contact that gradually normalized boundary violations. He maintained elaborate mental tracking of household movements and exploited scheduling gaps meticulously. Jessica's childhood journals, discovered during the investigation, documented concerning patterns. Dad took away my bedroom door after I asked to sleep at Katie's house. Dad reads my diary and phone messages to keep me safe. Dad made me sit on his lap during my punishment talk even though I'm 13. These entries stopped abruptly. A common response when children learn documentation leads to increased restrictions. Former neighbors from the Mathises' previous neighborhood revealed additional concerns. The Hendersons, who lived next door when Jessica was a teenager, recalled an incident where their daughter refused to visit the Mathis home after a sleepover. She wouldn't explain why, just became hysterical when we suggested going back. We assumed it was typical teenage drama. Dr. Catherine Liu, expert in predatory psychology, explains, the most effective predators operate with remarkable restraint and calculation. They test boundaries methodically, retreat when resistance appears, then advance again later. Their patience creates the appearance of isolated incidents rather than a deliberate pattern. Before continuing our examination of this case, if you've noticed concerning patterns in someone's behavior toward children, excessive physical contact, isolation attempts, gift-giving without occasion, demanding secrecy, leave a comment below. What warning signs do you think people most often miss? Your observations might help others recognize potential dangers before they escalate. Like this video if you believe we need more education about identifying predatory behaviors in trusted community figures. The most chilling aspect of Michael's profile? His ability to maintain completely separate identities, community pillar and predator, with neither realm aware of the other's existence. 6 weeks before the shooting, Lily Mathis began refusing to sleep alone. Her 4th grade teacher, Ms. Reynolds, emailed Jessica about Lily's declining academic performance and sudden withdrawal from classroom participation. "She's falling asleep during lessons," the message read. "When awake, she stares at her desk instead of engaging with material she previously enjoyed." Jessica's notes, later recovered from her police locker, documented Lily's changing behaviors with clinical precision. April 3rd. "Lily cried when I said Grandpa would watch her Saturday. Claimed stomachache. No fever present." April 7th. "Second nighttime accident this week. Pediatrician found no UTI or physical cause. Recommended monitoring stress levels." April 12th. "Lily refused bath time with Grandpa's help, threw unusual tantrum when he insisted." April 15th. "Found Lily attempting to barricade bedroom door with desk chair. Child psychologist Dr. Hannah Chen explains these shifts. Children often lack vocabulary to describe abuse. Instead, their bodies communicate through behavioral changes, regression in toilet training, sleep disturbances, sudden academic problems, physical complaints without medical cause. These are essentially trauma responses in developing brains. Jessica's police training had taught her to recognize signs of child victimization. She'd interviewed countless children, referring them to protective services. Yet applying this professional lens to her own home created cognitive dissonance. First responders experience a particular blindness when threat indicators appear in their personal lives, explains former FBI profiler Dr. Martin Rhodes. They're trained to believe evidence, not intuition. Without concrete proof, the mind rejects the unthinkable, especially when the suspect is family. On April 20th, Jessica purchased a nanny camera disguised as a smoke detector. Her credit card statement shows additional purchases from surveillance suppliers on April 23rd and 27th. Installation timestamps indicate a methodical approach, first monitoring common areas, then expanding to hallways and bedrooms. Her actions show the careful calculation of both an officer gathering evidence and a mother attempting to disprove her worst fears, notes Dr. Rhodes. The multiple camera purchases suggest escalating concern rather than initial certainty. Meanwhile, Michael's behavior underwent subtle shifts. Neighbors reported seeing him walking Lily home from the bus stop with his hand on her shoulder, leaning unusually close during conversations. He volunteered to supervise her bath times and bedtime routines with increasing frequency. These moments, unremarkable in isolation, formed a pattern visible only in retrospect. Jessica's text messages to fellow officer and confidant Maria Suarez revealed her growing internal conflict. May 2. "Something feels wrong in my house, can't explain it. Keep telling myself I'm paranoid." May 9th. "If I report suspicions without evidence, I destroy my family over nothing. If I wait for evidence." May 12th. "I'm sleeping on Lily's floor now. Told her it's because of her nightmares. Truth is, I'm afraid to leave her alone." According to the Department of Justice, 34% of sexual abuse perpetrators are family members. Among these cases, 80% occur in the victim's or perpetrator's residence. Most disturbingly, 73% of child victims don't report their abuse for at least 1 year, with 45% never disclosing it at all. Dr. Eliza Montgomery, trauma specialist, explains the paralysis that often grips protective parents. They face impossible calculations, weighing a child's immediate safety against the trauma of false accusations, family dissolution, and potential disbelief from authorities. This psychological pressure often freezes decision-making. Jessica continued gathering evidence while implementing protective countermeasures, changing work shifts to minimize Lily's time alone with Michael, creating sudden family outings when tensions rose, installing additional locks, sleeping positioned between her daughter's room and her father's. These precautions built a tenuous safety net, one that would catastrophically fail on May 17th, when Jessica's shift ended 4 hours early due to a department-wide training cancellation. 2:13 p.m., May 17th. The department-wide active shooter training scheduled for Tampa police officers was canceled due to the instructor's medical emergency. Jessica's shift, originally ending at 8:00 p.m., concluded at 3:30 p.m. instead. Her text to Michael went unanswered. Coming home early. Is Lily back from school? 3:42 p.m. Security footage from the convenience store 2 blocks from the Mathis residence shows Jessica purchasing a coffee, seemingly in no hurry. The cashier later told investigators she appeared calm, maybe tired, and nothing unusual. 7 p.m. Jessica's patrol car pulls into the driveway. Neighbor Carol Wilson's doorbell camera captures Jessica entering her home through the front door, patrol bag over her shoulder, moving with standard caution, no indication of premeditation or agitation. 11 p.m. Jessica's smartwatch records an elevated heart rate, jumping from 72 BPM to 126 BPM within seconds. This timestamp aligns precisely with the moment Jessica accessed the hidden camera feed on her phone. The footage, later recovered by digital forensics, revealed Michael in Lily's bedroom engaged in inappropriate contact with his granddaughter. 12 p.m. The same doorbell camera shows Jessica exiting her front door at a run, then immediately re-entering. This momentary exit is consistent with what trauma experts describe as flight response before fight engagement, a brief disassociation before decisive action. 13 p.m. Jessica accesses her gun safe in the master bedroom. Her service weapon is removed. The safe's digital log shows a clean, accurate code entry on first attempt, contradicting later claims of blind rage or emotional incapacitation. 14 p.m., 4:17 p.m. These 3 minutes contain no digital footprint. Based on physical evidence and ballistics, investigators reconstruct the following sequence. Jessica proceeded to Lily's bedroom, where she instructed her daughter to go to the neighbor's house. Lily's GPS watch shows movement across the street at 4:15 p.m. Jessica confronted Michael in the hallway outside Lily's room. Blood spatter analysis indicates Michael was standing facing Jessica, approximately 7 feet apart when the first shot was fired. 17 p.m. 5 shots were fired in a pattern that forensic analyst Dr. Joseph Park describes as tactically deliberate, not emotionally random. The bullet placement tells a crucial story. The first shot struck the right shoulder, a standard police disabling technique. The second hit the left thigh, suggesting the subject was turning or lunging. The third and fourth shots entered the torso in close succession. The fifth shot struck the upper chest area. This firing pattern is consistent with police training for an advancing threat, not with vengeful execution. Michael fell in the hallway bleeding from 5 non-fatal wounds. Jessica made no attempt to administer medical aid, a deviation from her training that prosecutors later emphasized. 18 p.m. Jessica called 911 from her personal phone. This is Officer Jessica Mathis, badge number 4572. I need units and medical at 1427 Oak Lane. I've shot my father 5 times. He's alive, bleeding. I need units now. The dispatcher noted her mechanical tone and unnatural calmness. 3 neighbors reported hearing the shots. Angela Perez, a retired nurse living next door, described rapid succession gunfire, followed by silence, no screaming, no additional commotion. 9 p.m., 4:35 p.m. The critical 17 minutes before first responders arrived showed Jessica's most contested actions. Security footage from the hallway camera reveals her secured her weapon on a high shelf, retrieved Lily from the neighbor's house, sat with Lily in the living room, physically separated from Michael, made no additional calls, did not check Michael's condition or provide aid, remained seated, holding her daughter, Until officers arrived, medical experts testified that immediate first aid might have reduced Michael's blood loss by 30%. Jessica's defense argued her primary duty was to protect her child from further trauma. 36 p.m. First responding officers arrived to find Jessica sitting calmly, Lily clutched to her chest, Michael bleeding but conscious in the hallway. Officer Raymond Davis described the scene. It was methodical, controlled. Nothing like the chaos we typically encounter at shootings. We've presented the timeline of events based on forensic evidence. Now we want to hear from you. Where does protection end and vengeance begin? Would you have administered aid to someone who harmed your child, or maintained your distance? Comment below with your thoughts on what legal obligations should apply when moral imperatives conflict. Your perspective matters in these difficult conversations about justice and protection. The Tampa Police Department faced an unprecedented challenge, processing a crime scene where the suspect was one of their own. Chief of Detectives Marcus Rivera made an immediate decision. This investigation required absolute transparency. We called in the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to lead, with our department in supporting roles only. The standard gold-yellow crime scene tape created a perimeter around the Mathis residence at 5 p.m. Within 30 minutes, 3 separate investigative teams deployed. Team 1, Physical Evidence Unit, led by Senior Forensic Technician Alicia Gomez. Team 2, Digital Forensics, headed by Technical Specialist Devin Clark. Team 3, Special Victims Unit, coordinated with Child Protective Services. The blood pattern analysis told us exactly how the confrontation unfolded, explained Gomez. Directional splatter on the hallway walls indicated Michael was standing when the first shot hit, then fell backward. The lack of defensive wounds or struggle marks on either party suggested he was taken completely by surprise. The evidence collection process followed enhanced protocols due to the officer involvement. Each item was photographed, logged, and countersigned by 2 technicians. The chain of custody documentation ran to 27 pages, triple the standard procedure. Most critical among the physical evidence, gunshot residue distribution confirming the 7-foot distance of the first shot, 5 recovered bullet fragments, and the hidden cameras themselves. 3 devices professionally installed and operational for approximately 3 weeks. The digital evidence provided the clearest timeline, noted Clark. We recovered 217 hours of surveillance footage, including 34 incidents classified as criminal conduct. The timestamps aligned perfectly with Jessica's work schedule, suggesting Michael calibrated his actions to her absence. While the technical teams processed the home, Lily underwent examination at Tampa Children's Hospital. The medical findings proved crucial to the subsequent legal proceedings. Dr. Melissa Chen, pediatric specialist, documented evidence of ongoing abuse, findings consistent with the recovered video footage. Her report stated, "The physical examination results indicate multiple incidents over a sustained period rather than a single occurrence." Meanwhile, Jessica sat in interview room 3 at Tampa Police Headquarters, the same room where she had questioned suspects countless times. Now Detective James Wilson faced the challenge of interrogating a colleague. Internal Affairs. Captain Eleanor Price observed from behind the one-way glass. Officer-involved shootings follow strict protocol. When that officer is also the reporting party and potential victim's advocate, the complexity multiplies exponentially. Jessica's initial statement, delivered without legal counsel present, spanned 42 minutes. The transcript reveals a methodical chronology delivered in professional language, a stark contrast to typical shooting suspects. I observed criminal activity via security cameras installed due to reasonable suspicion of ongoing abuse. I identified the subject as my father, Michael Mathis, actively molesting my daughter. I retrieved my service weapon from secure storage, instructed my daughter to proceed to safety at neighbor Angela Perez's residence, and confronted the subject. When asked why she fired 5 times, Jessica's response became the centerpiece of both prosecution and defense arguments. I followed departmental training. I fired until the threat to my daughter was neutralized. The subject remained conscious and ambulatory. I maintained weapon discipline throughout the encounter. The investigation faced unprecedented scrutiny from both law enforcement ranks and the public. 3 separate police unions issued conflicting statements within hours. Community demonstrations formed outside headquarters, half supporting Jessica as a protective mother, half demanding equal justice regardless of her badge. Internal Affairs documentation notes unusual friction between investigating units. Detective Wilson's supplementary report highlighted this tension. Officer Mattis provided an account consistent with physical evidence, yet displayed concerning detachment regarding her father's medical condition. She exhibited no remorse for the shooting itself while expressing profound distress regarding her daughter's victimization. Within 48 hours, the investigation expanded to Michael's electronic devices. Digital forensics uncovered search histories consistent with predatory interests dating back 7 years. These findings forced detectives to consider a disturbing possibility. Jessica's daughter might not have been his first victim. As investigators compiled their preliminary report, Jessica remained in administrative custody, not formally arrested but not free to leave. Her service weapon, badge, and departmental access were suspended pending the investigation's outcome. Florida Department of Law Enforcement officials prepared to present evidence to the district attorney, who would face the unenviable decision of whether to charge a police officer for shooting her daughter's abuser. District Attorney Caroline Mendez faced unprecedented pressure when the Jessica Mathis case landed on her desk. After 3 days of evidence review, she announced her decision. Officer Mathis will face charges of attempted second-degree murder. The evidence suggests premeditation without prior planning. She made a deliberate choice to use deadly force in a non-immediate threat situation. The charging decision fractured the law enforcement community. The Police Benevolent Association released a statement defending Jessica. Officer Mathis utilized appropriate force to neutralize an active threat to a child. Meanwhile, the Ethics in Policing Coalition countered, "No badge grants the authority to act as judge and executioner, regardless of provocation." Media coverage reflected this division. Channel 7's headline read, "Mother's Protection or Officer's Revenge." The Tampa Tribune ran a front-page analysis. When justice wears 2 faces, the Jessica Mathis dilemma. Social media exploded with hashtags supporting both perspectives. Stand with Jessica and Nobody Above the Law trended simultaneously. Public opinion polls showed stark demographic splits. Respondents with children under 18 supported Jessica by 73%. Law enforcement families backed her by 81%. However, legal professionals and civil liberties advocates expressed concern about vigilante precedent by 65%. Jessica's defense team, led by prominent attorney Rebecca Zhang, pursued dual strategies. "We initially considered temporary insanity," Zhang explained in a later interview. But Jessica's methodical actions undermined that approach. Instead, we focused on the defense of others doctrine, arguing her daughter faced an ongoing threat of serious harm. The defense emphasized 3 key elements: documentation of repeated abuse through surveillance footage, Jessica's reasonable belief that conventional reporting would delay protection, the tactical nature of the shooting. Designed to neutralize, not kill, prosecutor Thomas Harrington constructed a counter-argument focused on timing and alternatives. Officer Mathis discovered abuse that wasn't actively occurring at that moment. She had lawful options: call for backup, secure her child, and make an arrest. Instead, she chose to retrieve her weapon and fire 5 calculated shots. Legal experts debated the merits of both positions. Criminal defense attorney Maria Rodriguez noted, "The defense of others' justification typically requires imminent threat. The prosecution will argue that once Lily was removed from the house, the immediate danger ended." Former prosecutor James Williams countered, "The ongoing nature of abuse creates a continuous threat state. Any reasonable parent would view the abuser's continued presence as an imminent danger." The case sparked nationwide debate about where protection ends and vigilante justice begins. Constitutional law professor Elizabeth Chen observed, "We're asking impossible questions." At what point does a mother's moral obligation to protect her child override legal constraints? Does professional training as an officer heighten or diminish her legal responsibilities? As the case proceeded toward trial, it transcended simple legal categories. Georgetown ethics professor David Montgomery explained, "This case forces us to confront competing values: child protection, due process, professional responsibility, and parental duty. There's no precedent that adequately addresses this intersection." The courts would need to determine whether Jessica's actions represented justified protection or excessive force, a distinction with profound implications for how society balances justice, protection, and retribution. While legal proceedings advanced, the psychological damage rippled through 3 generations of the Mathis family. Dr. Catherine Liu, trauma specialist at Tampa Bay Recovery Center, explains, "When abuse occurs within families, the harm extends beyond the primary victim. Each family member experiences distinct but interconnected trauma responses. Lily, now 11, began specialized therapy using trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. Her treatment plan, developed by child psychologists, focused on rebuilding her sense of safety and bodily autonomy. Court records indicate frequent nightmares, hypervigilance, and anxiety attacks during the first 6 months after the incident. Children who experience abuse by trusted family members face uniquely complex recovery challenges," explains Dr. Rebecca Torres, pediatric trauma specialist. The betrayal compounds the harm. Lily must process not only the abuse itself but also the violent resolution she witnessed. Jessica underwent a comprehensive psychological evaluation during pretrial proceedings. The assessment documented acute post-traumatic stress disorder, characterized by intrusive memories, sleep disturbances, and hyperarousal symptoms. Most notable was her compartmentalization, clinically detached when discussing the shooting but emotionally overwhelmed regarding her daughter's abuse. First responders with PTSD often present differently than civilians, notes Dr. Marcus Feldman, police psychologist. Their training to function during crisis creates a disconnect between their professional and emotional responses. Jessica can recall every tactical decision with precision, while struggling to process the emotional reality of shooting her father. Extended family members reported collateral psychological effects. Jessica's aunt described complete identity destruction upon learning of her brother's actions. "Everything we believed about our family history required re-examination. Old photographs, childhood memories, all contaminated by new knowledge. I was 14 when my uncle started grooming me," shares a survivor who requested anonymity. "My mother discovered it and called the police immediately. 20 years later, I still struggle with trust, but her immediate protective action showed me I mattered. That single moment of protection became my foundation for healing. She chose me over family loyalty, over reputation concerns, over everything. That's what saved me." Recovery requires specialized intervention. The Mathis family accessed 3 key support systems. First, trauma-specific therapy for both Jessica and Lily, including EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, to process traumatic memories. Second, family therapy focused on rebuilding their relationship without Michael's presence. Third, peer support groups, Lily with other young survivors, Jessica with parents of abused children. Healing from family violence doesn't follow a linear path, explains Dr. Torres. Recovery involves acknowledging that some damage cannot be undone, only integrated into a new understanding of self. Both Jessica and Lily must construct new narratives about their family, their safety, and their future. The most significant recovery factor appears to be their preserved relationship. Unlike many abuse cases where protective parents are temporarily separated from children during investigations, the court allowed continued contact between Jessica and Lily with therapeutic supervision. This continuous connection provides crucial stability, notes Dr. Liu. Despite everything that happened, Lily retains one fundamental truth. Her mother protected her when protection was needed most. That knowledge, however complicated by violence, creates a foundation for healing. The Tampa County Courthouse stood silent as Jessica Mathis entered for the final day of her trial. After 7 days of testimony and evidence presentation, the case moved to jury deliberation. Judge Howard Richardson instructed the jury, "You must determine if Officer Mathis's actions constituted justified defense of another or exceeded the boundaries of lawful protection." The jury deliberated for 14 hours across 2 days. Their questions to the court revealed their focus points. Does Florida law require retreat before using deadly force when protecting a child? And does the fact that the victim was not actively abusing the child at the moment of the shooting affect the self-defense claim? When the jury returned, foreperson Eliza Jackson stated, "On the charge of attempted second-degree murder, we find the defendant not guilty." A pause then. "On the lesser-included charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, we find the defendant guilty." The split verdict reflected the jury's nuanced view, acknowledging Jessica's right to protect her daughter while finding the 5 shots excessive under the circumstances. During sentencing, Judge Richardson faced conflicting recommendations. The prosecution requested 5 years imprisonment. The defense argued for probation only. Richardson's decision acknowledged both perspectives. 2 years probation, surrender of law enforcement certification, mandatory completion of anger management, and 500 hours of community service educating parents on legal methods of child protection. His accompanying statement became widely quoted. The court recognizes both the moral imperative to protect children and the legal boundaries that prevent vigilante justice. Today's sentence reflects that tension. Jessica showed no visible reaction to the verdict. Michael, still recovering from his injuries, did not attend the proceedings. Only Lily, seated with her therapist in the back row, displayed emotion, holding a small smile as she was escorted from the courtroom to begin rebuilding her life. The Mathis case catalyzed substantive policy reforms across Florida police departments. Tampa PD implemented mandatory secondary reporting protocols for officers suspecting abuse within their families, creating clear channels outside chain of command. Additionally, 12 departments established specialized units where officers can report concerns without triggering immediate criminal proceedings. The case highlights warning signs often missed in family abuse scenarios: unexplained behavioral changes in children, excessive control over access to family members, sudden resistance to specific people or activities, physical complaints without medical cause, disrupted sleep patterns or regression in development. If you suspect abuse, resources exist beyond 911. The National Child Abuse Hotline, 1-800-4A-CHILD, provides confidential reporting options. Child advocacy centers offer forensic interviewing without immediate legal escalation. School counselors serve as mandated reporters who can initiate protective processes. The ethical questions raised by Jessica's actions continue in courtrooms, academies, and homes nationwide. Her case prompted revisions to police training modules on handling personal crisis situations. Where do you draw the line between protection and vigilante justice? Is the system equipped to protect our most vulnerable before tragedy forces intervention? Like this video, if you believe more resources should support protective parents, share it with someone who works with children. Comment below with your perspective on what Jessica should have done differently, or whether she had viable alternatives. Our central question remains: how far would you go to protect your child? Jessica Mathis answered with 5 bullets. The legal system answered with a conviction. But for her daughter Lily, the only answer that mattered was simple. Someone finally said, "Enough."